Every day, somewhere in the world, something happens that shouldn't. Something dark. Something that makes you lock your doors a little tighter at night. I'm Jacob, and I collect these stories. These are 3 scary, true night shift horror stories. Story 1. The Man in the Parking Lot. In the fall of 2019, a 24-year-old woman named Megan started working the night shift at a distribution warehouse just outside of Columbus, Ohio. The pay was decent, and she needed the money to finish her last year of college. The shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Brutal hours, but she told herself it was only temporary. The warehouse was massive. Over 400,000 square feet of concrete floors, metal shelving, and fluorescent lights that buzzed constantly. During the day shift, there were over 100 employees moving around. But at night, the skeleton crew was just 12 people spread across the entire building. Megan's job was simple. She worked in the returns department, processing items that came back from customers. Her workstation was in the far back corner of the warehouse, the quietest and most isolated section. Most nights, she wouldn't see another person for hours at a time. She didn't mind the solitude at first. She'd put in her earbuds, listen to podcasts, and let the hours pass. The work was mindless, and she liked not having a manager hovering over her shoulder. But about 3 weeks into the job, something changed. It started on a Wednesday night. Megan had clocked in at 10 p.m. like usual. She grabbed her scanner, headed to her station, and got to work. Around 1 a.m., she decided to take a short break. She walked to the back exit, a heavy metal door that led out to the employee parking lot, to get some fresh air. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few cars belonging to the night crew scattered under the dim orange glow of the security lights. Megan leaned against the wall and looked up at the sky. It was a clear night, quiet, peaceful. Then she noticed him. There was a man standing at the far edge of the parking lot, just beyond the reach of the security lights. He was completely still, just standing there, facing the building. Megan squinted, trying to make out any details. She couldn't see his face. He was too far away. But she could tell he was looking in her direction. She told herself it was probably just another employee on break. Maybe someone from the loading dock. But something about the way he was standing, so still, so deliberate, made her uneasy. She went back inside. The next night she saw him again, same spot, same posture, same stillness. This time she was certain he was watching her. She could feel it. She mentioned it to one of her co-workers, a guy named Derek who worked in shipping. He shrugged it off, said it was probably just someone waiting for a ride or a homeless guy passing through. The area wasn't great. There were a few encampments near the highway. It wasn't unusual to see strangers wandering around at night. But Megan wasn't convinced. On the 4th night, she decided not to go outside. She stayed at her workstation the entire shift. But around 3 a.m., she got a strange feeling. That prickling sensation on the back of your neck when someone is watching you. She turned around slowly. Through the small window on the back exit door, she could see a face, pressed against the glass, staring directly at her. It was him. Megan screamed. She stumbled backward and knocked over a stack of boxes. By the time she looked back at the window, the face was gone. She ran to find Derek. She was shaking, barely able to get the words out. Derek grabbed a flashlight and went outside to check. But there was no one there. No footprints. No sign that anyone had been standing at that door. Derek told her she probably just saw a reflection. The fluorescent lights could play tricks on you, especially when you were tired. Megan wanted to believe him, but she knew what she saw. She finished her shift that night, But she didn't go back to her station. She stayed near the front of the warehouse, close to the other workers. The next day, she called in sick. She needed time to think. She wasn't sure if she was overreacting or if something was genuinely wrong. That evening, around 8 p.m., 2 hours before her shift was supposed to start, she got a call from her supervisor. There had been an incident at the warehouse. A man had been found hiding in the building after the day shift ended. He had concealed himself inside one of the large shipping containers in the loading dock. Security only discovered him because a motion sensor triggered an alarm after everyone had left. When they pulled him out, he had a backpack with him. Inside the backpack, they found duct tape, zip ties, a hunting knife, and a printed photograph. The photograph was of Megan, taken through the window of the back exit door. The man was arrested. His name was Gerald Tate. He was 41 years old and had no connection to the warehouse or any of its employees. Investigators later discovered that he had been watching the building for weeks, studying the night shift schedule, learning the routines. He had chosen Megan because she was the most isolated, the easiest target. Megan never went back to that job. She dropped out of school that semester because she couldn't focus. She moved back in with her parents 2 states away and didn't work a night shift again for over 3 years. She told me that the thing that haunts her most isn't the photograph or the items in his backpack. It's the fact that he was watching her for weeks. Every night she walked to that back door to get some air, he was out there, in the dark, waiting. And she had no idea. Story 2. Someone else. On the floor. In the winter of 2021, a man named Carlos took a job as a night security guard at a medical office building in Phoenix, Arizona. He was 34 years old, recently divorced, and needed something to fill his nights. The job seemed perfect. Easy money for walking around an empty building. The building was 6 stories tall. During the day, it housed dermatologists, dentists, physical therapists, and a few specialty clinics. But at night, it was completely empty. No patients, no staff. Just Carlos and the silence. His shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. His duties were simple. Walk each floor once every 2 hours, check that all the doors were locked, and make sure no one had broken in. The rest of the time, he sat at the front desk, watching security monitors and reading books on his phone. For the first 2 months, the job was exactly what he expected. Boring, quiet, uneventful. He'd make his rounds, find nothing, and go back to his desk. The most exciting thing that ever happened was finding a water fountain that wouldn't stop running. Then came the night of February 14th. Carlos started his shift like any other night. He clocked in at 11, did his first walkthrough, and settled in at the front desk. Around 1 a.m., he started his second round. He took the elevator to the 6th floor, the top, and began working his way down. 6th floor clear. 5th floor clear. 4th floor clear. When he reached the 3rd floor, something felt different. He couldn't explain it at first. The lights were on, same as always. The hallway was empty, same as always, but there was a smell. Faint, but noticeable. Like body odor mixed with something sour, something unwashed. Carlos paused and sniffed the air. He'd never smelled anything like that in the building before. The cleaning crew came through every evening before he arrived. The place always smelled like disinfectant and floor wax. He walked slowly down the hallway, checking each door. All locked, all secure. But the smell was getting stronger. He stopped in front of Suite 312, an orthodontist's office. The smell was strongest here. He tried the door. Locked. He pressed his ear against the door and listened. Nothing. He convinced himself he was imagining things. Maybe the smell was coming from the vents. Maybe something had died in the ceiling, a rat or a bird. It happened sometimes in old buildings. He finished his round and went back to the front desk. At 3 a.m., he started his third round. This time, when he reached the third floor, the smell was gone. The hallway was normal. Suite 312 was still locked. Carlos felt relieved. He figured the ventilation system had just cycled out whatever was causing the odor. Problem solved. But when he turned to head back to the elevator, he heard something. It came from behind him, from inside Suite 312. He froze. He stood completely still, staring at the door, listening. Then he heard it again. A soft thump, like someone moving furniture or someone standing up. Carlos's heart was pounding. He reached for his radio to call his supervisor, but then stopped. What was he going to say? That he heard a noise? He'd sound paranoid. He'd been on the job for 2 months and never reported a single incident. He didn't want to be the guy who called for backup over a strange sound. So he did something he would later regret. He pulled out his master key and unlocked the door. The office was dark. He reached inside and flipped the light switch. The fluorescent panels flickered on, illuminating a standard waiting room. Chairs along the walls, a reception desk, magazines on a coffee table, empty. He stepped inside and looked around. Nothing seemed out of place. He walked past the reception desk and into the back hallway where the exam rooms were located. The first exam room, empty. The second exam room, empty. The third exam room door was closed. Carlos stood in front of it. He could feel his pulse in his throat. Every instinct told him to leave, to lock up and go back downstairs and pretend he never heard anything. But he had to know. He turned the handle and pushed the door open. The room was small. An exam chair in the center, cabinets along the walls, a counter with dental tools, and in the corner, curled up on the floor behind the exam chair, was a man. He was filthy. His clothes were torn and stained. His hair was matted and greasy. He looked like he hadn't bathed in weeks, and he was staring directly at Carlos with wide, unblinking eyes. Carlos stumbled backward. He nearly tripped over his own feet, trying to get out of the room. He slammed the door shut and ran down the hallway out of the office and didn't stop until he was back in the elevator. He called his supervisor immediately. Then he called 911. When police arrived 20 minutes later, they found the man still in the exam room. He hadn't moved. He was just sitting there, staring at the door, waiting. His name was Dennis Hartwell. He was 52 years old and had been homeless for over a decade. He had a history of mental illness and had been in and out of psychiatric facilities for years. But here's the part that still keeps Carlos awake at night. When investigators searched the building more thoroughly, they found evidence that Dennis had been living in that office for over 3 weeks. He had found a way to get in through a ventilation shaft on the roof. He'd been sleeping in different offices each night, eating food from the break rooms and using the bathrooms after hours. And every night when Carlos did his rounds, Dennis would hide. He'd wait in closets, under desks, behind exam chairs, perfectly still, barely breathing, until Carlos passed by. For 3 weeks, Carlos had been walking through that building thinking he was alone. He wasn't. Dennis had been watching him the entire time. Story 3: The Voice on the Intercom. In the summer of 2020, a 19-year-old college student named Jamie took a job at a 24-hour gas station in rural Nebraska. It was the only place hiring in her small town, and she needed money for textbooks. She didn't love the idea of working alone at night, but the manager promised her the overnight shifts were easy. Just a few truckers passing through. Nothing ever happened. The gas station sat at the intersection of two county roads, surrounded by flat farmland in every direction. The nearest town was 15 miles away. The nearest police station was 20. At night, the only light for miles was the glow of the gas station canopy. Jamie's shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. For the first 2 weeks, it was exactly as boring as the manager promised. A few customers here and there. Mostly truckers buying coffee and energy drinks. She'd stock the shelves, mop the floors, and spend the rest of the night doing homework behind the counter. Then came the night of July 23rd. It started normal. Jamie clocked in, took over from the evening shift, and settled in for another quiet night. By midnight, she hadn't had a single customer. She was sitting behind the counter working on an essay when the intercom crackled. The gas station had a two-way intercom system at each pump. Customers could press a button to talk to the cashier if they needed help. Usually it was just people asking to turn on the pump or complaining that their card wasn't working. But there was no car at the pumps. Jamie looked at the security monitors. The lot was completely empty. The intercom crackled again, and then a voice came through. It was a man's voice. Low and gravelly, he said one word. "Jamie." She froze. Her name, he said her name. She stared at the monitor. The parking lot was empty. The pumps were empty. There was no one there. She told herself she misheard. Maybe he said something else. Maybe it was just static that sounded like her name. Her hands were shaking as she reached for the intercom button. "Hello? Can I help you?" No response. She waited. 30 seconds, a minute, nothing. She convinced herself it was a glitch, old equipment, bad wiring. The station was old and poorly maintained. Things broke all the time. She went back to her essay, but she couldn't focus. She kept glancing at the monitors. Still empty. An hour passed. Then 2. No customers, no sounds. Just the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant rumble of the highway. At 2:47 a.m., the intercom crackled again. "Jamie." The same voice, the same tone, clearer this time. "I can see you?" Jamie's blood went cold. She looked at the monitors, empty. She looked out the windows. Nothing but darkness beyond the canopy lights. She grabbed the phone behind the counter and called 911. Her voice was shaking as she explained what was happening. The dispatcher told her to stay calm, stay inside, and lock the doors. A deputy was on his way, but it would take at least 20 minutes. 20 minutes. She locked the front door. She turned off the lights in the back room. She crouched behind the counter where she couldn't be seen from outside. And she waited. The minutes crawled by. Every sound made her jump. The ice machine humming, the coolers cycling, her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. At 3:15 a.m., the intercom crackled again. "You locked the door." "Smart girl. But I'm patient." Jamie was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. She had the phone pressed to her ear, still connected to the 911 dispatcher, who was trying to keep her calm. Then she heard something else. Not from the intercom, from outside. Footsteps, crunching on the gravel at the edge of the parking lot, getting closer. She pressed herself against the counter. She couldn't see anything from where she was crouched. She didn't want to see anything. The footsteps stopped. Then a knock on the glass door. "Jamie." The voice was right there, right on the other side of the door. "Open up." She didn't move. She didn't breathe. She just clutched the phone and waited. At 3:22 a.m., she saw headlights sweep across the parking lot. A car was pulling in, then another set of headlights, then red and blue flashing lights. The deputy had arrived. She heard shouting. Men's voices, footsteps running, then a car engine starting and tires screeching on pavement. She stayed behind the counter until the deputy knocked on the door and identified himself. When she finally stood up and unlocked the door, she was still shaking. The deputy told her what he saw when he pulled in. There was a man standing at the edge of the parking lot, just outside the canopy lights. When he saw the patrol car, he ran to a truck parked on the side of the road, hidden from the gas station's cameras, and took off. They never caught him. The investigation revealed a few things. The intercom system had been tampered with. Someone had installed a wireless transmitter on one of the pumps, allowing them to broadcast through the intercom from a distance. And they also found footprints in the dirt behind the station. Someone had been walking around the building multiple times that night, circling, watching. And in the tall grass about 50 yards from the station, they found a lawn chair, several empty beer cans, and a pair of binoculars. He had been watching her for hours, maybe longer, learning her name from her name tag, waiting for the right moment. Jamie quit the next day. She never worked another night shift. She told me she still has nightmares about that voice, about him saying her name, about him saying, "I can see you." She still doesn't know who he was, and she probably never will. If this story kept you up tonight, good. That means you're paying attention. I'm Jacob. Stay safe. And whatever you do, trust your instincts.